About a year ago, I made a video about cooking with corn, and I got a lot of positive comments on that video. One of the commenters was someone named Teosinte, which is interesting as that's the wild species that corn was derived from. In any case, this commenter posted in the comment section a recipe, an Austrian recipe for an apple polenta. And I'm going to attempt to finally make this after nearly a year with as much of my own ingredients as I can, and I'll try to document the process here. So let's go over what we have. We have a half a liter of water, about 200 grams of fairly coarsely ground Flint corn. This is Bronze Beauty Flint that I ground last year. So 100 grams of butter, which is about 7 tablespoons. 5 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. There's 2 tablespoons of honey. There is the zest from 1 orange. The recipe called for the zest of a lime, but I didn't have a lime. There is about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. The recipe didn't specify a quantity, and that quantity to me seems reasonable. 1 pinch of salt. I have big hands, so that's a big pinch of salt. 2 large eggs. These are from my own chickens. Obviously, of course, the corn, if you know my channel, the corn's my own corn. There's 50 grams of raisins. There's a half a kilo of apples. The apples are Gold Rush. I wish I could say that they were grown by me, but they were not. But these were purchased from a local orchard, and they were grown locally. They've been peeled and cored. And the recipe called for 1 shot of rum, and I am out of rum, but I have plenty of bourbon. And if the manufacturer would like to sponsor me and send me a free bottle, I wouldn't mind at all. So let's get to making this. So let me clear these things out here, and we'll start the process. First of all, I'm going to melt the butter into this glass baking dish. I have this set back here on a warming area, and I'm just going to unwrap the butter and let it sit in here until it melts. Now, this seems like a tremendous amount of butter, but I'm just going to go with this because it's the first time I've done the recipe. So while the butter is melting, I'm going to pour the half a liter of water into my pot here. I'm going to add my 200 grams of Flint corn. I think I'm going to bring this to a boil first. Didn't exactly specify that, but that seems to me to be a good idea. So we're going to shoot for that. I'm going to add the salt to the water and then bring this up to a boil, and then we'll add the corn. And then we're supposed to stir it until it thickens up nicely, add the rest of the ingredients. So let's get this boiling. Okay, so obviously my water is starting to boil, so we are going to add the corn and stir and then we'll go from there. Okay, so the recipe said to stir this until it had formed a thick mass. I felt like what I probably should do is stir it until most of the bad lumps were out, until it had thickened up really dramatically, which we've certainly got to that point. So I'm going to add the other ingredients, and well, I shouldn't say all the other ingredients, but we'll go through the process here. So I'm going to add the 5 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. Got 2 tablespoons of honey. Good enough. Got about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, give or take. Got the zest from 1 orange. And we've got a shot of bourbon. I'm going to add this stuff and stir it up really good, and I'm going to add the eggs last because I'm not sure I want the eggs to cook at all. So give this a chance to cool down a little bit. So I've added everything and incorporated it in except for the eggs now, and it smells really great. I don't have a great sense of smell. You can probably tell I'm sick, but I can really smell the orange zest, and I suspect now that the addition of the alcohol is to dissolve some of the volatiles in the citrus and distribute them. That's my best guess at this point though, but it really seems to be pretty effective. So I'm going to add the eggs and stir those in, and then we pour it into the pan. So I may wait a bit more here to get the butter melted and then grease the sides really well, and then we'll pour this in there. So I have the 2 large eggs incorporated now, and the butter is now fully melted, so I'm going to add the polenta mixture into this pan, and then we'll go on to the next step. The polenta mixture has now been added to this glass baking dish, and that is truly an epic amount of butter. Wow. So the next step is we sprinkle the surface with our ½ kilo of apples and our 50 grams of raisins. So I'll do that and then show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've got the ½ kilo of apples, apple gold rush, and 50 grams of raisins evenly distributed across the top of this apple polenta, and I've lightly pressed them into the surface of the polenta. At this point, the instructions state to put it into the oven and bake for 20 to 25 minutes. However, it did not list a baking temperature, so I'm going with 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is sort of a standard default baking setting, and we'll just go from there. In Celsius, that would be about 175 degrees Celsius. This is America, so the oven I have doesn't show Celsius. So in any case, let's throw this in, and then we'll check on it until it seems like it's done. 20 to 25 minutes seems like it may not quite be enough time for me. We'll probably go a little longer than that. Test it until it seems like it's done. I ended up letting this cook for slightly less than an hour, maybe about 45 or 50 minutes. I wanted to wait until we had some browning around the edges at the very least, and firm crust starting to build up on the outside. on the top. Also, I wanted to see the center of this puff up, swell up, and I wanted to see most of the butter disappear, which all of that has happened, so I've decided this is basically done. I'm not going to try it until later, but this looks like it's about finished, and it looks pretty appealing right now, so we'll taste it later and then we'll give some impressions of how that is. So the apple polenta actually turned out really good. It's really different than any other cornmeal based product I've ever had. It is nothing like the polentas I've made before, and it's not really like cornbread either. The texture is much more along the lines of a really heavy, dense cake. It's actually a really good texture, and I think it would be really worthwhile playing around with this kind of a recipe and tweaking it in some ways, because the texture is really good. It is really excellent. There's no flour in this, and there's no baking soda. If you were to add some amount of flour or baking soda or more eggs or less butter, I can see a lot of potential here to create a Flint corn based product that is texturally really different than either polenta or cornbread. Taste wise, it's really strong on the citrus zest, which I kind of expected that, but it's really quite strong on the citrus zest, and it is maybe closest to a Christmas fruitcake in terms of the flavor, and even the texture is not that far off from a really dense fruitcake. A little more granular because of the Flint corn, but that's fairly close as far as the taste and texture. We did find that it was much better with yogurt ice cream or whipped cream, which is what I have now, but we ate a lot of it with either yogurt or ice cream, and that's a good way to do it. So this is the final results of the apple polenta recipe that I was kindly suggested by a viewer, and it's really, really good. I would recommend it strongly. I will put a full copy of the recipe in English and German in the description below. So this is definitely worth trying. Thanks for watching.